Rumspringa. Rumspringa.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
At what age?
Typically 16 and a half.
Okay.
I left around that time.
Welcome to another episode of Steadfast Men Unscripted. I'm your host, Matt Antis, and today I have a very special friend of mine, Simon Yoder. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. I feel very honored to have me share my story. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for being here. One thing I want to say in the beginning of the show, I want to give every man that comes on this show to interview. We talked about this a little bit before, but I want to give just a quick introduction to give the people who listen to this show a little bit about you. So, Simon, you are a husband of just about 7 years.
Yes, sir.
Coming up here soon. You are a father of 2 girls, and you grew up in the Amish community, which right. I feel like a lot of people listening to might want to know all about.
All right, we'll get into it then.
So we'll get into it eventually. So yeah, let's get started. Where did you grow? Do you grow up in Ohio, I think?
Yes. Do you know Wayne County, Ohio? Mm-hmm. It's the Amish. Basically, if you talk to anybody around Pittsburgh, they know Holmes County, Sugar Creek. That's where...
I think I may have heard it. It's like south. I want to say the south.
Southern part of Ohio. Well, it's more central, but
okay.
I grew up in one county north of there.
Okay.
So basically, really close to what they call a tourist trap.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, over in Ohio, about 2 hours from here.
2 hours from Pittsburgh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's the name of the town?
It's called, for anyone who wants to look it up, it's called Downton.
Downton.
That's where I grew up.
Okay.
But then my parents, when I was about, 12, my parents moved over to Orville or Worcester.
Okay.
One or the other.
Worcester, Ohio?
Yeah.
Really? I know where that is.
Okay.
I went to college with a kid who's from Worcester, Ohio. Because that's north then. Isn't it?
It's like central Ohio, really.
Okay.
Although, like, sometimes I don't know. It's central Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So you grew up in Downton, Ohio, and in Worcester, and you grew up in the Amish community.
Driving a buggy,
horse and buggy. First of all, how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I was going to say my parents are a little unusual because I have 2 sisters older, I'm right in the middle, and then 2 brothers younger.
Okay.
That is very small for an Amish family.
Yeah.
So interesting, about 3 weeks ago, I was at my uncle's funeral in Ohio.
Okay.
And I should have known this, but they had 16. My uncle, Paul, passed away.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. I was not that close, but he was one of my favorites, but he's really cool. But they had 16 kids. That was very typical. I would say somewhere anywhere from 12.
16?
10, 12, 13. That's about normal.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's just, I can't even, that's like literally just rapid fire. What's the average age that people get married?
I would say probably 18 to 20, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they start pumping them out right away then?
Yeah, pretty much, age. Because they've never heard of, what.
Yeah,
anyway.
That's crazy. 16 kids, jeez.
Yeah, so I read the news article. After he passed. Like, they always do that in the Amish community. They had 54 grandkids.
Wow.
So I told my wife, I was like, that's a small tribe.
Yeah. How old was he when he passed away?
83, something like that.
Okay. So your mom and dad had 5 kids. Mm-hmm. You're in the middle.
Yes.
Are your mom and dad, is most of your family still in Ohio?
No, this is a cool thing. I left when I was 16. I wouldn't recommend anybody do it, but I did it because that's what I wanted to do. But I wouldn't recommend it.
Leaving?
Not leaving home.
Yeah.
Or leaving your parents' house until you're 18.
Yeah.
I'm just prefacing that for anyone who's listening.
Okay.
Please don't leave until you're 18. But anyway, so I left when I was 16 for obviously many reasons, but which we'll get into it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I left at 16, then I would say I was in Ohio for 2 more years, but then my sister left. And she lives in Alabama now and has her own kid just a few months ago, her and her husband. And then my 2 brothers, younger brothers, left like 4 or 5 years later. And then maybe 3-4 years ago, my parents left as well.
Jeez.
So I only have my older sister that's still Amish.
That's still Amish. In
Yeah.
Ohio?
No, they're my family's all over America. My sister and her husband, my sister Aurora and her husband live in Alabama.
Okay.
My oldest sister Claire and her husband live in Maine.
In Maine.
Yeah, my parents and my 2 younger brothers live in Ohio still.
Huh.
And then we live in Pittsburgh here.
Okay. The Amish sister, any contact with her?
No, they have no phone.
Really?
I could probably write a letter, but when we invited them for our wedding, you have your stamped envelope. They didn't even send it back.
Really?
No.
Oh,
so
man.
I don't know if they're not allowed to communicate with us because every area is a little bit different. But either that or they just kept the letter. I don't know what happened there. So either way, we never heard back from them. But yeah.
Interesting. So what was it like growing up in an Amish house, day to day?
Yeah.
Like I grew up Indiana, PA, Amish, Smicksburg, PA.
Okay.
That was like 20 minutes away. I don't know if I told you this ever, but like
I did not know that.
So I grew up kind of near the Amish, and I knew a couple of different people in the Amish community.
Okay.
So, but I was just curious. So I kind of had an idea of like what their life was like, but not totally. So tell us.
I was going to say, I thought a lot about this.
Yeah.
Ever since you asked me to be here, I was thinking a lot about that. And I wasn't coming up with anything at all. Then I asked Chanel, I was like, I'm like trying to get some ideas because it's just normal to me. I grew up like that. And another thing is I never felt like how I lived was valuable. I didn't feel like it was important, if that makes sense. But when I started thinking about it, I'm like, a day-to-day life, obviously there's no electricity. So you wake up, you have a flashlight on your nightstand or something. It's crazy. You can't live. I can't live like that anymore.
Yeah.
But anyway, have a flashlight. You walk around and you get your lighter and you turn on your kerosene lantern. That's how my dad and we would wake up and go to work together.
Okay.
But that was normal for us. And then I would make breakfast and he would feed the horses and get the horse ready for work. So that was an everyday life. We worked 10 hours, something like that.
Jeez.
And then come back home. This is normal.
Every day.
Every day. I've actually been preparing for this. I realized I've been working since I was like 8 or 9. Like crazy. But
school though, you went to school
until 8th grade.
Until 8th grade.
But in the summer I would work.
Okay.
There was a farmer next to us and I would work.
Okay.
Like I would paint. I was telling Chanel, like I would paint pretty much any flat surface. He paid me, so I would paint the fence, the barn, wagons, whatever he needed. I would paint it. So I've been working for a long time. But back to what is it like? Like then you come back home, especially in winter. It's dark when you get home. There's no battery lights on the buggy. Everything is kerosene. You can't see nothing.
Jeez.
I would feel very unsafe right now driving in a buggy, but it's just normal. Going back to like what is it like growing up Amish? It's just normal, and I really had to think about it. Like I don't have a whole lot of details. It's like you have your garden.
Yeah.
You feed your horses, and the goats. You mow the grass with a push mower by hand. I don't know anything else.
Did you look at you called us English? You would have called us English, right?
Yes, I wanted to actually I do want to preface that so that anybody who watches the show, when I say the English, as I'm describing, walking through my story, the English means what we call us. Yeah. And then it's Amish and English. Yes, you're right.
Amish and English. So when you would see us, when you were Amish, did you just like, was it always curiosity? Was it like, those stupid people like don't like? I was always just curious because, like I told you, at Smicksburg, when I would grow up going there. My family had like a little farmhouse, and I'd like rip this dirt bike up and down the gravel road, and then they would go by on their horse and buggies. So I would always be respectful. I would always pull over, stop. We would always wave to each other. Almost every single Amish buggy, they would always wave. I would wave. But I was always like on the other side thinking to me, like, I wonder if they secretly just think I'm like a total idiot, or if they're curious, or if they don't like me here, like us there. You know what I mean? I don't know. I was always curious of that.
I think part of it is it also varies family to family. My parents would never shun anybody, whether they were supposed to or not. They didn't think it was right to shun anyone. So I grew up in a family where I think we were more like non-judgmental. Like those people. Actually, now that I say that, I do remember my mom saying, like, they're not like this anymore, but my mom would say, I was like, we're living right as Amish. We're going to heaven. So what about them? That the English people, I was like, what about them? And she was saying, well, they're okay because they don't know any better. They grew up English, so they're okay. They're still going to heaven.
Okay.
But for us to leave, we're going to go to hell. That's basically the message.
Jeez.
Which we'll get more into that as I tell. When I tell a story about me leaving, I want to get into that part of it and what I was feeling. But so for me, I grew up in a family where it's largely non-judgmental. Like, hey, these people can live how they want, right? But we have a certain belief, and we are living by that belief.
So what about Sundays?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm glad you asked. So something you probably don't know, the Amish people have church every 2 Sundays.
Every 2 Sundays?
Yes.
What do you mean every 2?
Every second Sunday they have church.
So not every Sunday you're at church? Really?
And the reason being is it's so far to go where they're going sometimes. Yeah. And then it's typically like a 4-hour service, maybe a little bit more.
Okay.
But by the time you drive there and get home, it's 5 hours. So you can't do that every week.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. So the other Sunday, they don't have phones, remember? They can't text each other. So if you want to go somewhere, you just say, hey, we're going to go to the Miller's house. You actually refer to their name, but let's just say the Miller's house. And you go to Miller's house. If they're home, you hang out, you have lunch or dinner. Lunch with them. Yeah. If they're not home, you decide, do you go home or do you go somewhere else? What happens if 2 families decide to come over? Well, you just have a big old party. That's what happens. It's really interesting.
Wait, so in every Amish community is by like every other week?
As far as I know.
Wow, I didn't know that. So
unless that has changed. That might have changed with some Amish since they're using a lot more drivers. They might have shortened the services, but where I'm from, which is one of the strictest sects of Amish, which is Shorten Trooper Amish.
Like, which is what Amish?
Shorten Trooper.
Shorter Trooper?
Say that again? You're butchering it, Matt. Shorten Trooper.
Interesting.
That is one of the strictest sects. You're not allowed to have power tools, no chainsaw, no drill bit.
Nothing.
We were not even allowed to gravel our driveway.
Jeez.
Yeah, so it was pretty insane. Wow. Even the reflectors on the buggies were not allowed to be the white and red ones. They had to be the gray ones. I have, to this day, I have no idea. It was too modern, I guess, to have the red, the ones that people can actually see. It was too modern. So some of that's changing because of how many buggies have been getting hit. My parents were telling me that just a few weeks ago. They're starting to put in a lot better reflectors and stuff.
Yeah, because people are just getting smashed.
They're getting hit and people getting hurt.
Yeah.
Buggies are just ripping apart.
Man. That's terrible. So on a Sunday, from the other friend David that I talked to, I think you know
Miller.
Yeah, David Miller. Yeah,
Miller,
he always said that their service, or he told me at least, their services were a lot in German and not in English.
I want to get into that.
Is that true?
Too. Yes.
Okay. So what? So you show up, the guy's talking in German. Do you understand it?
That's the thing. As a kid, I probably grabbed 2% or less, or 5% or less, because I didn't know German, and that's most of it. I know that nowadays, I actually know this one guy. His name is Sam Miller. He's an Amish preacher. He was one of the first ones that started speaking in plain Dutch. People could actually understand what he was preaching. But growing up, that's why people don't know anything, because they don't know what they're talking. What are they preaching? You have no idea, especially as a kid. But when I was at my uncle's funeral, I took Chanel with me. It was a real experience for her. But in the time since, I've learned a lot more German. So I would say I probably grabbed about 1/3 of it.
Okay.
And then during the service, the guy was getting really riled up. Pastors get like that. And Chanel was like, it sounded like the guy was singing. I'm like, that's the Amish version of a guy getting fired up. He was really getting into it. But you're right, a lot of it's in German and very, very few in actual, understandable Dutch. Well, we call it PA Dutch.
And that's what you speak?
Yeah, Pennsylvania Dutch.
Dutch. And that's what I think before the show you were talking to me about how you were teaching your daughters it a little bit.
Yeah, so as we were talking about, the last 2 weeks since you asked me to be on the show, just because I'm getting this revelation or this self-discovery is really what I call it in the last 2 weeks. I've taught them more Dutch in the last 2 weeks than in their entire life. It's just because I'm realizing that's valuable. That language and my heritage is valuable. There's so much to that. A lot of that I learned from my dad would have been honesty, integrity, and hard work. That's really set the foundation of who I am today. So that's I was just telling Chanel, like Chanel was like, you need to do this more. And I'm like, I am doing it more. Like the other day, I said something to our oldest. I told her in English. No, I told her to stand up, but I said it in Dutch. And then she was like, that means stand up. But she's catching on to it really quick.
Wow.
And then I'll quiz her like pretty much every day. Both of them, I'm like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Then sometimes they'll have to guess. But a lot of it, they're getting correct now.
That's so
cool.
But
now, I want to get a foundation down where there's like 5 or maybe 8 phrases I'm teaching them now.
Okay.
I want them to have a solid understanding of those, and I'm going to start adding more to it as I go.
Interesting. That's awesome.
So anyway, another thing I wanted to say that we were talking about during the show is anybody that knows the Dutch language, just think about it is like we know a language that no app can translate. We talked about that.
Yeah. That's
like,
why I wanted to talk about.
There is no app. Like I'm thinking about this. If I teach the girls Dutch and we ever get in a situation where we have to speak Dutch,
right?
There's almost zero chance that anybody could translate that. Spanish, French, any other language, there's a chance somebody could record it and send it to somewhere and translate it to an AI app. This language can't be translated. I mean, somebody could build an AI model, I guess, but it's probably not going to be accurate just because there's a lot of nuances to it. I was telling you before the show is there's English, German, and made-up language.
Okay.
So
that would also, and that's only for like PA, Ohio, because I know there's, Amish down in other states and
they're
stuff like that. I mean,
now.
they're everywhere. Yeah. So that dialect though is only like to this area, or do you think Amish like down south, like where Dennis I think is from and stuff like that?
That it's kind of like, how in America you have normal speaking people up north, and the southern people have accents.
Like accent or slang, like certain slang they use.
It's
the
similar.
Same thing. Okay.
So in Ohio, it doesn't matter how fast the Amish are speaking. Like when we were at that funeral a few weeks ago, I could follow along completely flawless.
Really?
But in Lancaster, to this day, it's hard for me to truly follow along because they say. I would say a lot of their language is a little more High German. So even they're like 6 hours apart.
Yeah,
they have a huge difference.
A lot more German in their dialect.
I have a hard time following along. Now, if they speak slowly and clearly, I can easily follow along. But if somebody's in the store and they're talking back and forth, it's really hard to figure out what they're saying. Even though I grew up with the Dutch language, it just varies from even different settlements like that. It varies, just like in any language, the dialects and everything.
Okay. So basically, growing up, though, you kind of already answered this. Growing up, it was just work, school.
Pretty much.
Homeschool. What was school like?
Well, actually, I'll tell you a little bit about that because that's also in my notes.
Yeah.
I don't even think I'm gonna have to use my notes.
Yeah. You can't.
I went to school. What was that?
If you need to, it doesn't matter.
No, I went to school, an Amish school, one-room schoolhouse.
Okay.
From grade 1 to 5. Grade 6 to 7, I was homeschooled. There's a reason. I'll get into that. And then grade 7, I went to a different Amish school. I don't know. Do you know anything about one-room schoolhouses?
Just from Smicksburg, like I told you, that I would see their one-room schoolhouse. I would see them outside, no shoes on, barefoot, playing
that's it?
Volleyball or kickball or something.
Calluses on their feet.
Yeah. So is that what it was?
Yeah, and there's no dividing wall in there.
Nothing.
So basically the way, at least where I went to school, typically the way they would do it is if you're in the front of the school, the left hand would be the lower grades. And you start by first grade. That you don't have preschool or anything like that.
Okay.
You do whatever, and then you go to school.
Okay.
So basically, first grade, until when that line ends, second grade starts. You just go up and down the line, and go to 8th grade, and then you go to work. after that.
After 8th grade. So you're all in the same 8th grader and a 1st grader, same room.
Yep.
Teacher floats around and
typically they'll have one teacher and then a helper.
Okay.
That's how it always was for me. Now, see, I've been out for 16 years. Some of that stuff could have changed, but this is accurate when I was there.
Yeah. Interesting. But I just think about, it's just such a wide difference from 1st to 8th grade.
Yeah.
Even huh?
Yeah, so, but another thing is, I don't know if you know this or not, but they have a chalkboard all the way across. And then you have, let's just say they're in the 1st grade, right? Or the first, some things are also together where they bring 1st and 2nd grade together for certain things. But then the teacher writes stuff on the chalkboard. You leave it on there, and then the next grade you move over a little bit.
Interesting.
And eventually you raise it off.
Yeah.
But that was usually the student's job to go. It was our job eventually to come. She would pick someone. It was a female for us, but 2 ladies. But pick someone. I don't know how they did it. Like they pick someone every so often. It's our job to take it off of this, erase it off. So cool. But anyway, so what I wanted to say is I went to school 1st grade to 5th grade. There's a lot of bullying that happens in school. I don't know if you know that or not, in the Amish community.
Yeah.
So that's why I left, because I was not going to go. Growing up, I never had a whole lot of friends. I don't know why. It's just part of it. That's how it was.
Yeah.
That's why I value my friendships so much now.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's why basically I left. My parents pulled me out. Then I got kicked out.
Then you got kicked out.
Technically, officially, I got kicked out.
Jeez.
But then we were homeschooled for 2 years. And
the rest of your brothers and sisters too, or just
yeah, everyone got
whole
kicked
family?
out. Yeah, for some reason our family got picked on, but it helped me today because it's tough growing up like that. But I do really think it's helped me have grace and always try to treat people right, because I know what it's like being treated like crap.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we officially got kicked out, but my parents pulled me out. I think it was like 2 weeks. Was it 2 weeks into 6th grade? It was like a few weeks in, I got kicked out, you know. And then my parents homeschooled me for 2 years, and then they found another really cool. It was my favorite year of school ever.
7th grade?
Yeah, 8th grade.
Oh, 8th grade.
Because that's when I went back to school. The teacher, she was so cool. She just like treated me like everyone else.
Yeah.
I don't know why I always got picked on.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I was having a hard time recalling everything. I was telling Chanel, I've taken a long time to bury all this stuff for 16 years.
Jeez.
So there were some painful moments as I was preparing for this because I was like, oh man, this sucks.
Yeah.
My brother kept, when we were out at the funeral a few weeks ago, like I was telling you, my brother was, we were talking through some stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of painful. It sucks. But I'm realizing, then again, I go back into the self-discovery. This has helped me get where I'm at.
Yeah.
Burying it's not going to help, right?
Yep.
So that was part of it.
Yeah, which is the whole purpose of this show. Finding steadfast men that are loyal, unwavering, they've stayed committed. And so that's awesome. I'm glad that you've been able to figure out and dig through some stuff.
Yeah, exactly, right.
So 8th grade, so then you graduated, I guess, left school. Then what'd you do, and what age? That's what, like 14?
That would be 14, yeah.
So what'd you do from 14? Because you left at the age of 16.
Yeah.
So 2 years, you just worked
your
full
tail
time off doing what?
So interesting. I don't know if you know this or not, and this might have changed by now. But growing up in the Amish community, you give your parents all the money until you leave home, or until you're 21.
Wow.
So I worked like a dog every day, and I didn't know any different. I just gave my... Well, let's just tell the truth. My parents don't really know this, but if they listen to the show, they'll know. I would skimp some money for a cell phone and a radio, because I have to pay my monthly phone bill, right? Well, it was prepaid phone, but I had to pay for this every month.
I thought you weren't allowed to have a phone, though.
Well, I did have a phone. And then, but I'll talk about the phone when I talk about me leaving. And all that kind of stuff. But so I was building lawn furniture.
Okay.
For those 2 years. Do you know what poly lawn furniture is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really high quality.
It's like Trex decking kind
basically,
of, but in furniture style.
Yeah, it's a furniture style. So I was building that for the whole time. Okay. And then when I left the Amish, I ended up going to work for a construction crew, which was my dad's first cousin. And I was texting him, hey, I want to leave. What can you help me out? So he he gave me a job for like, I don't know, 6 months or a year, something like that. And then I got a different job working as like building bedroom furniture, like high quality, like solid oak and that kind of stuff, bedroom furniture.
Okay.
So anyway, back to what happened between 14 and 16. I was building that lawn furniture. And at some point, I think I got a cell phone around 14 probably. I think, it was after I left school. So I had my cell phone. But somehow I had to skip money without my parents knowing. So to this day, I'm not quite sure how I did it, but I always had money from my cell phone.
Was it cash? I mean, you got paid in cash probably?
A check.
Oh, check.
But I think it probably, I also had side jobs.
Yeah.
Dude, I was just working like a dog. Since, I'm telling you, I've been working since I was probably 8.
Huh.
And I'm really glad. But
yeah,
Chanel was just saying, like, what if I would have banked all that money all those years? To me, that's great to think about, but I'm realizing I was working for work's sake, and it's really helped build the work ethic I have now. And obviously, I think money is very important, and I want to build a lot of wealth. That's one of my things is I'm going to figure out how to build wealth because it's good for the kingdom of God. It's good for my family, and it's good. It's good if I can bless my family, if I can bless my friends, take you out to lunch and dinner. All this is good, but I'm realizing me not having that has set a foundation of just hard work, like a solid work ethic. So anyway, that's that. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So you did that so you worked for 2 years, unpaid.
Pretty much.
And then the age of 6. So like, what happened at the age of 16? First of all, can we get into rumspringa?
It's running around. So that is
because at the age of 18, I thought
rumspringa. I was gonna say non-Amish, butcher it, but anyway. Rumspringa.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
At what age?
Typically 16 and a half.
Okay.
I left around that time.
So was that, and is it like, it's like is it a day on the calendar that everybody just knows that, hey, this is my day that I'm going to dip out here?
Not really. I think it's just when you get close to 16 and a half.
Do you have to tell your mom and dad? Be like, hey,
not
I'm
really.
heading out for a week?
No, typically the way it works is, at least where I grew up in Swartz and Trooper, you do it, but you don't tell your parents. They don't know you're doing it, but they know you're doing it, right? Like you have you party, whatever. You go and drink beer, and some people smoke weed. That you
with other Amish?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
With other Amish or English?
Amish.
This experience. Is it a week long?
No. This is a lifestyle.
Oh, so this is like, I thought it was like a week long.
No.
And then you have to like make your decision at the end of the week.
No, so generally it happens, like I said, around 16 and a half. And then somebody might join church around 18 or 18 and a half. So you have time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you have like a year and a half to, and if you just decide to hang out, there's people at upwards of 20 that are still running around because they haven't made their decision yet.
But the Amish will still allow them into their community.
Yes.
Because then it's like, once you make your decision, that is final for life.
Yes, pretty much.
Interesting.
Unless there's a split. Did you know that?
What do you mean? Split? So,
you know how every church in the world, sometimes it splits, right?
Yeah.
Amish is the same way.
Okay.
So if the church splits, everyone has to rejoin.
Okay.
But if you don't join, you're not shunned. That's what my parents did. Like, I just found out this last weekend we had my parents out. I found out in 2013 there was a split.
Okay.
And they never rejoined. I found out, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago they weren't part of the church. I just found out last weekend that it was that long.
Wow.
I visited them many times.
Yeah.
Coming home from, actually, I was still living in Baltimore when they were not part of the church, and I never knew.
Interesting. So so your parents never joined back
after 2013.
After 2013, they were allowed to. So basically, at that point, they could just
do what they want.
And then that's when they left the Amish faith. Is that when they left?
That's a journey behind that too. Is they still went to the Amish church until about 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
But when they would have their, I forget what it's called, but basically they have their, I don't know what it is. Like basically they have some kind of like, I don't know if somebody's being disciplined or what's happening. Mm-hmm. They had to leave because they're not a member. So that typically I forget what it's called, but typically when you have these meetings, all the youth, all the kids, anybody that's not a member has to leave, and then they'll do their meeting. Sometimes people, for example, my parents gravel the driveway.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do that, so my parents have to confess, oh, we sinned, in front of the whole church.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then you move on.
Huh.
So anyway.
Over graveling a driveway.
Yeah. So it's just different stuff like that. And
Jeez.
then I remember as a kid, I would, every now and then, my parents got in trouble with the bishops all the time. They would show up. My dad would go out and they'd have to talk. I would go to the pantry. We had a window and I'd try to listen to what they're saying. But I couldn't really hear it. But it's just interesting. Like, that's how it is. It's similar to Catholic, I think, in a sense, because a lot of it is based on, I hope I'm doing good enough to make it to heaven. So that's, I don't
interesting.
know. Yeah. So my parents, back to my parents. So since 2013, they haven't been members. I didn't know. But my parents were telling me they had to leave every time they have these meetings because they're not allowed to be in there.
Wow. Because they weren't members, they didn't rejoin the church.
They never rejoined, so technically they can't be shunned.
Man, I just have so many questions right now. But I want to finish rumspringa.
Oh, yeah. Back to that.
Yeah. So 16 and a half, you were able to go out, do your thing, like experiment in the world. Your mom and dad know, but nobody talks about it.
Pretty much.
And so everybody at that age, every Amish at that age now can go do whatever they want with other Amish people or English people.
Typically Amish or people that are former Amish.
And so okay, let's just tell us your story then. How did it start?
So back, I would have turned 16 and a half in August.
Okay.
Or maybe June, something like that. But I left in August of 2009. But my story is slightly different because I didn't just rumspringa. I just left. So do you want to hear how I left?
Yeah. How'd this happen?
So basically, I want to make sure that I have my ducks in a row here.
Yeah.
But basically, it was a Sunday night.
Okay.
We would always get together in the living room to pray.
Every Sunday night?
Every Sunday
as a
night.
Family?
Actually, typically every night. Usually pretty much every night. But this is a Sunday night. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was like, it's still hot out, but it's cooling down.
Yeah.
I went up to my room. I knew I wanted to leave, so I had packed my bag beforehand. I had literally $12. I had like 3 CDs and a CD player. Remember the portable CD players?
Yeah. I had one.
I had one pair of jeans and one T-shirt. And then, but I left in my Amish clothes. But what I did is I felt like it was the right thing to do to leave a note so my parents know I just didn't get vanished by whatever measure.
Yeah.
Didn't get kidnapped. So I wrote a note on there. I wonder if they still have that note. I need to ask my mom and dad. But I wrote a note telling them I'm leaving home, but I'll be back to visit. I left it on my dresser. So then I crawled out the window, and there was a roof right there. Crawl out the window with my little bag in hand.
Yeah.
You know the arborvitae trees?
Yeah.
It was a bush similar to that.
Okay.
I crawled down out of it, and then the road was maybe 30 feet from our house, 50 feet at the most. I just hammered across the road. It's a busy road into the cornfield. Dude, my heart was pumping because the whole time I knew I didn't want to be Amish, and we'll talk more about why I didn't want to stay there. But the whole time I was walking down the cornfield, it was like, I don't know, like a quarter mile, and I'm texting my dad's cousin, Jacob is his name. It's like, hey, I'm on my way. We had pre-designated location. He was going to pick me up.
And he had left the Amish Faith, I'm assuming?
Years ago, like 30 years prior or something like that.
So you planned this?
Pre-planned it with my cell phone I wasn't supposed to have.
Yeah.
So anyway, I remember walking down the cornfield, and these are such vivid memories because of how I felt. I was like, I knew that I was going to hell, but I didn't care because there was something beyond being Amish, and I didn't know what it was at that time. I just knew that the Amish youth, because my sisters were 1 year and 2 years older than me, right around there, and they would tell me stories of what they're doing. They were like drinking, they were partying, and some other stuff. And I'm like, I really didn't want to have a part of that. To this day, I know it's God protecting me, but at that time, I didn't know what it was. So I wanted away from what was obviously bad.
Yeah.
But I was willing to still go to hell. I was like, either way, right?
Yeah.
So I decided I'm leaving anyway. I'm gonna die and go to hell. Like this is how I felt because that was
wild.
what was preached to me all these years. But what I didn't know is that my dad's cousin was a Spirit-filled Christian.
No way.
Yeah. So
who was meeting you?
Yeah, he was meeting me. I didn't know this before. I did not even know they were Christians. But so he picks me up and I live with them. I'm there like Sunday night. I'm there all day Monday. I have no idea what I did.
Okay.
So Tuesday, his wife takes me out shopping for new clothes because I didn't have anything, and they pay for it all. Such a blessing. They paid for all my clothes, but when we came back, there was a sheriff's note on the door that they need to take me home.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Because of your age, you think?
Yeah, my age. My dad had called up the sheriff. My dad's cousin, Jacob, said, I have to take you home, otherwise I'll get in trouble, but we'll leave the door unlocked. Basically saying you're welcome to come back.
Yeah.
But I cannot not take you home.
Yeah.
So this was Tuesday night. He took me home. It was the most awkward dinner I've ever had in my life. Nobody said a word. Everyone was...
Were you in your Amish clothes again?
I don't even know.
Huh.
Probably. That's an interesting question. I don't even know that.
Yeah.
But guess what I did that same night? I was so mad that my dad did that. Like, we have a good relationship now.
Yeah.
But I was so mad. I was like, as I knew he called the cops on me, right?
Well, did he say hi when you walked in?
No, I don't even think, I don't really know if any words were spoken at all night.
You just walked in, sat down.
We had our dinner.
You ate, and then...
It was quiet dinner, I tell you that much. It was quiet.
Man.
But, so this was Tuesday night. I was so mad because they had called the police on me. So I ended up leaving that same night by a different way.
Again?
Yep, the same night.
Out the window.
Tuesday night. In a different window, though. But my brothers just recently, my youngest brother told me that they saw the tracks from me leaving, and they knew I had left again.
Yeah.
So my oldest sister, which is Amish to this day, and my mom convinced my dad to not call the police again or the sheriffs.
Okay.
They would just let him do. He's safe. We know where he's at, kind of thing. So he didn't do it again, and I'm very thankful he didn't because that's kind of where my journey started. Because, hang on.
Did you go back to your to the
Yes
uncle? No, cousin.
My dad's cousin.
Yeah, your dad's cousin.
The door was unlocked, and I slept on the couch again comfortably that night.
Yeah.
But what was cool about what I really appreciate about him is it was just 3 of us on the crew. We were up on a roofing crew, and he was telling testimonies of guys being healed, saved. I never heard of this because I had a German/English Bible. Have you ever seen those? You probably wouldn't.
No.
So there's a column. You know how the Bible has columns,
right?
But this one had German and in English.
Okay.
So I had never probably read more than a few pages of the Bible ever, but somehow it resonated in my heart. To this, I couldn't explain it, but I felt something there. He invited me to come to church. So I was like, nah, I'm thinking I don't want to go, but I'm a nice guy, right? They help me out. I'll go to church like 2 or 3 times, and then I'll tell them I'm not into this. But in those few services, yep, God got hold of my heart. In those basically 3 Sundays, he got a hold of my heart. And that's not when I got saved officially, but that's when God started working on my heart, and I've been going to church ever since. But the real transformation, or when I committed my life to God, was a few years, maybe a year. I think when I was 18 or something like that, closer to 19. Okay.
After working with him, construction, roofing, I'm assuming, or what?
Yeah, for about a year I worked with him, and then I worked in a big company building custom bedroom furniture. Remember we were talking about it before the show, the huge oak, and I don't think it was maple, but cherry, beautiful furniture. So I was working for them until the day I moved to Baltimore, which was in August of 2011.
But it's with him that you were able to kind of get introduced to Christianity, God.
Yes.
Read the Bible that you can actually understand.
Yes. And the interesting thing is, I just thought of this, is when I was on his crew, I had no tool belt, no hammer. After the first few days, he paid me and said, now go to Menards. Basically, it's like a Lowe's or Home Depot.
Yeah.
He said, go to Menards and buy yourself a tool, buy yourself everything you need. So my coworker, I couldn't drive, so my coworker and I went to that Menards. We got all my tools. To this day, I still have that hammer.
No way.
As a memento. It's
That's
a beautiful
cool.
hammer. It's the
That's
most beautiful
cool.
hammer I've ever owned. The tool belt, I still have the tool belt as
Yeah?
a memory of what they did for me.
Huh.
So yeah, it's really coll what they did, and it's just that was the starting point for me
Wow.
building basically the life I have now, being a Christian. And
Wow.
yeah,
That's awesome. What a story.
interesting.
Yeah. What a story. That's just, to me, it's just crazy because you're leaving your mom and dad and brothers and sisters, like, without just, like, it's just cold turkey. You're not even,
I'm out.
you're just out. Yeah. Like, I don't know. To me, that's just nuts.
I think the reason that was like that is because I felt like I had to pry myself loose.
Well, yeah.
And this is the only way I can do it.
Yeah.
I have to peace out.
Right.
So that way I can create separation and become my own person or create the life I want.
Yeah, no, I understand, like,
Right.
why, but, like, I like the concept of that, you know, is just crazy. But then whenever you hear, like, you go home and your whole family, like, doesn't even, like, talk to you, so then
No.
it's like no wonder you just left again.
Right.
So how long was it before you ever talked to any of them again? Was it a while? It was a
About
couple
2
years?
weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks, and then you talked to them again?
Yeah, I went back and visited 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
My heart was thumping like crazy when I was a half a mile away
Yeah,
because
I bet.
it was so intimidating. It actually happened for years until, I don't know, like maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago is when I'm like absolutely nothing. Like, it's just like, hey, I'm who I am.
Yeah.
But for years, even all the years that I lived in Baltimore, I would come home, and when I got close, I would feel this feeling of like, I don't know what it was, but my heart would thump, and just like, it was like fear maybe.
Yeah.
But eventually I got over that.
But they had to let you back because you were in that period of time.
Yeah, I never was shunned, so they were not.
And
they were
didn't
not
shun-
required to shun me.
Shun you. Okay.
No.
Huh. So you were the first out of all the kids. Then did you kind of like was it your brothers, your younger brothers, and then your sister, then your parents last? Because I know your older sister still, like you said.
So it was my sister Aurora.
Okay.
I really appreciate her so much. She at least had enough balls to tell my parents to their face that she's leaving. 2 years after.
After you left.
Yes, around 2 years after I left.
Wow.
She had enough kahunas to tell them to their face.
Yeah.
But I get it. I was the first one, but I was like, and she was also 18
Yeah.
when she she would have been actually 19 when she left.
Did she stay with your dad's cousin?
No, she went with a completely different family.
Okay.
The Franks family. They were very good to her.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then your other brothers followed suit as well.
I have no idea what happened there. All of a sudden I come home and I'm like, oh, my brother Paul's no longer Amish. And then I come home and my youngest brother Joseph is living at home when my parents still Amish. They let him live at home.
Not Amish.
Yeah. That's very uncommon.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's like...
I've talked to my parents about it, and I think the way they saw it is, hey, it's the last one. We have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
For me, they would have never done that because I would be a bad influence to them.
Huh.
But, yeah, he was the last one, so they did the heck with it, right?
Yeah.
So he literally had all his stuff, his vehicles, his boat, everything, which is in the garage.
That's crazy.
He had a car that changed color, like
Really?
changed color, and it had the I forget what the wings are called, but they go straight up.
Oh, Lambo doors.
Yeah, he had a Lambo style car.
That's crazy.
In the garage.
I'm surprised the bishop didn't kick your parents out for.
Do you remember
doing
that though? My parents weren't part of their church.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I didn't know this.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, I guess they're somehow getting away with this.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
turns out they were actually not part of the church, so they couldn't.
Wow. Man, that's just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So you told us your story a little bit. You got introduced to a good Christian family, started going to church.
Yes.
whenever you were about 18 and a half, you went to Baltimore? You moved to Baltimore?
Yes.
What was there?
So my best friend in Ohio, his brother was a youth pastor in Baltimore. And things were getting interesting in Ohio because I had a lot of good friends there. But there's also some that were into weed. And I got a little bit too close. I never did anything, but I got a little bit too close. And I'm just like, I'm out of here because I got to live differently.
Yeah.
So I never backslid really, but it's just like, I feel like I just was like a normal Christian, lukewarm.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get back on fire. And I was like, well, how can I do that? It's by going somewhere radical. Baltimore, I remember doing an outreach down there. There's boarded up houses. There's people that are homeless sitting on the steps. But somehow my heart came alive when I was down there doing the outreach. So I packed stuff in my car and I moved down there.
Wow.
Whatever fit in my car. To this day, I still have stuff in Ohio that I never got.
Really?
Yeah, because I was like, if I want to make God important, or if I want to live a better life, a righteous life, I have to do something different.
Okay.
So I lived down in Baltimore for like 5 years. Basically, initially it was outreach, but then I built my life there.
What did you do for a living down there?
I was initially furniture builder.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay.
Right back to furniture. But then I
For
helped
yourself or for a company?
for a company.
Okay.
Yeah, then I went and worked for, my friend was a manager at a delivery company.
Okay.
Delivering very high-end meats and mushrooms to
Okay.
DC and Baltimore.
Okay.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah?
Those days were a lot of fun.
Huh.
But that's what I did and then I was down there for like 5 years, basically did ministry. Interestingly enough is I helped with the youth ministry and did some services. Like I gave some messages.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I felt so alive back then. And I'm like, I never felt like I was going to be a pastor, but I feel like preparing a message is a lot different than reading the Bible.
Right.
Because for me, I had to do the homework because I was like, I'm absolutely not teaching something wrong because I'm responsible for this.
Right.
And I felt so alive back in those days. And I still feel very alive now, but there's something deeper in those days that when I was doing that, because I think part of it was there's a lot of people that don't know God. You have no idea, and you're just given a message to simplify it and realize what's important so that they grasp it. These kids, a lot of them have single family homes. Their dad probably don't know who their dad is. So like just to keep it simple and where it's actually going to impact them, I realized that's where it is. So anyway, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But basically, there's nothing really that highlights other than my spiritual growth that I had in Baltimore, seeing how people don't realize who God is. Even in America, people didn't know unless we told them. So we would do our outreaches every year, and then have the church was not in a good area. And then for a while, people were having their windows broken. Obviously, they didn't like us or something.
Yeah.
But people's windows got broken, but we just kept carrying on.
Wow.
So it was an interesting time to live because it's like part of it was a fear wanted to settle because they could come into the church and do stuff.
Shoot you up.
Right, but we just kept carrying on and nothing ever happened.
Kept loving all the people there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. So is that where you gave your life to the Lord when you were there?
No, we need to back up a little bit.
I
didn't
Jumping
finish.
ahead.
I didn't finish. Basically, I went to the church called Faith Family. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
In Ohio?
No.
It's a really big church in Ohio.
Okay.
I went there for like 2-3 months.
Okay.
It was just too big. I couldn't connect with anyone.
Yeah.
So one of my very good friends went to a smaller church. I don't know, like 200 people or something.
Okay.
Maybe 150. I don't know, something like that. But I was connecting with them, and then the pastor was former Amish. So there was a connection there.
Yeah.
But the way I got saved is he had a couple from Pennsylvania, Lebanon, Pennsylvania, one county north of or west of Lancaster.
Yeah.
There was an Amish couple that drove around in an RV, dressed Amish. They were spirit-filled. But their specific calling that they felt from God was that they're to dress Amish and be an outreach to Amish communities.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there's a lot. You would be surprised nowadays. There's a lot of Amish that are spirit-filled. And part of it is, I think people realize they can live how they want, a simple life, but they realize they have to accept Jesus and they can be spirit-filled.
Yeah.
This is what this couple was. But
Wow.
remember, they dressed Amish. There was this connection, and that's the first time I actually was like, because they did the altar call.
Okay.
I was going to church for like a year and a half maybe.
Yeah.
And I thought I was saved, but then I realized I actually have to say, like, if I would have died, I really believe I would have gone to heaven, but I made that public commitment.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I went out in the spirit.
Huh.
And then I was telling Chanel this, is when I woke up, like not woke up, but when I was opening my eyes, I was looking up. There was a bunch of like lights I've never seen, and I'm feeling it right now. There's like purple, like the most beautiful colors I've ever seen.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where it marked. I don't know what the day was, but I remember it was just before I moved to Baltimore. I had this really intense experience of like, this is what it's like, because I believe I had more of the Holy Spirit in me.
Yeah.
And like I saw those colors. I don't know. I tried to explain it to Chanel many times. I'm like, I can't describe it. Like just beautiful.
Yeah.
Purple. Purple means purity. But it's just the colors. That's what I really remember of it.
Yeah. Interesting. But that's like the moment that you accepted the altar call, made it official, public confession, which is so powerful.
Yes.
Right before you moved to Baltimore.
Just,
then to do the ministry.
Months. Huh? Yeah, a few months before I moved to Baltimore.
Yeah.
And then I lived in Baltimore for a while, like 5 years.
Yeah.
So I was going back to visit. This really interesting is, so I'm going back to surprise the pastor Yuri back here in Ohio.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, Yuri, I'm here. And he's like, I already knew you were coming. I'm like, how did you know it? He's like, Pastor Matt from Baltimore texted me. And here I find out that they were in the same pastors conference.
Really?
Like a few months before, and they realized that
they knew you.
The pastor from Baltimore was like, hey, you're from Ohio. Oh, that's interesting. One of our young guys is from Ohio. He's like, no way, what's his name? And then they realized they both know me.
Yeah.
So Pastor Matt texted Pastor Yuri that I'm coming to Ohio.
That's crazy.
So like, just interesting how God works. There's connections like that. And they made a connection at this pastors conference. And who would think, out of hundreds of pastors or however many there were, like they end up connecting.
Wow.
Just
That's
cool
crazy.
stuff like that's happened.
Yeah.
I found interesting.
It is interesting. So then, how long? So you were in Baltimore for like 5 years, you said?
5 years and 1 week.
Serving and growing and all kind of stuff.
Yes. So basically what I did there is I started out working on the media team, which was so fun. I liked that a lot.
Yeah.
So basically my job was to record. Like I had a normal job. I worked a normal day job. But I ended up, my main job was recording, right? Like the message and then all that. I had no part in editing, no part in doing the reverb. But over time, that's who I became, is doing the reverb. As our team grew, I would do the make the music and all that. And then I would help with the artwork. But at the end, when I left, I was basically the top person making sure all the episodes got uploaded.
No way.
The artwork. So it was really cool.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So you know what all this stuff is then.
I'm like, I haven't done it in so long.
Yeah.
That it's almost a little bit rusty. But yeah, like I would do all of that. I would help do the artwork for.
Really?
Like often the pastor would do like a sermon series.
Yeah.
So like I would make sure things are categorized, and it's not hard to do. You go to the website, you upload it, you title it correctly. But like, and then making sure it's labeled properly, like week 1, week 2. And then interesting with people serving, I would let people do it, right?
Yeah.
Soon enough, the pastor's wife texts me and says, hey, where are the last 2 sermons at? Then here I am.
Jack it all up.
Somebody messed up and didn't upload it correctly, or not at all. So I go get the church's computer and I take it home, I edit it, and it's fun. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
So I would edit it and then upload it, and that was probably one of the highlights of being there, is being able to do that.
I had no idea you served in a media team
Yeah.
and did all that. Interesting. Podcast?
Podcast.
Really?
Well, what I did is
sermons and stuff?
I took the messages and made them into a podcast.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like I would edit it.
Yeah.
I would have to you listen to it, and if there's something you want to cut out, often the Pastor Matt would go ahead and play like a clip. well, for copyright reasons, you can't do that.
Yeah, you cut that out.
So I had to cut it out. But what I would do is say around 14 minutes, then, just quickly take a note while I'm listening to it and then cut that out.
Okay.
That way I know where to find it.
Okay.
And there's a program I was using to kill dead space.
Okay.
So, like, you can do that to a point, but if you do it too much... Oh, can we still go?
We just lost power.
Oh, dang Lord. Anyway, so what happened? Did we lose power?
We lost power.
Okay. Just so that the audience knows what happened.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Whenever I cut this, to let everybody know, we totally lost power. Our beautiful little ambient fireplace is out for a while.
Is no longer there.
But thank goodness we have a former Amish person here to help us with lighting.
Yeah, I try.
And I think we'll be good to go.
All right, so where did we leave off?
All right, we left off with you in the media department in Baltimore at your church.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I forget exactly where we left off.
Doing podcast, editing all the podcasts.
That's
and stuff
right.
Like that.
Yeah, so I was basically, I think there was like one guy that was basically in charge of it all. Mm-hmm. But I was primarily doing all like the recording, editing, and uploading. And I tried to get people involved, and somehow they were not always doing their job. But anyway, so... Yeah. The pastor's wife would text me every so often, like, hey, these last two sermons aren't up. Where are they? Sorry, I'll get them up right away. Anyway, but I enjoyed that a lot. All that to say is I enjoy that type of work or volunteering a lot. I really enjoy that. But that was a lot of fun. But when I went to the next church, when I moved to Lancaster, I on purpose didn't tell them because I had felt burned out.
Needed a break.
I needed a break.
Yeah.
I know that I felt like I was pretty good at it, but and I told myself just because I'm good at it doesn't mean that I need to do it. And I think that's kind of where that was also part of my learning journey is like people drew a lot from me, and that's fine. That because people need help, but I felt like I was pretty good at it, and I did it a lot, and just allowed myself to get burned out. And then I basically felt like I couldn't take another day in Baltimore, the city. I love the people to this day. Still text the pastor, sent me hilarious stuff on Instagram every single week, probably.
Yeah.
So we were still connected. It's not the people. It was just living in the city like that. I know there was a time for that, and God had a reason for me being there.
Yeah.
But I felt like my time ran out, and that's when I moved to Lancaster to be part of a church up there.
So did you pick Lancaster because of a church? Did you pick it because of its Amish?
No,
okay.
Not the Amish. No.
I was just curious.
Oh, sorry.
Like
I love Amish
curious,
people.
like how Lancaster was it? School, job, church. What took you up there?
Oh, that's cool. This is something else I want to tell you. It's just the faithfulness of God. When I moved to Baltimore, I had no job lined up, and within a week I had a job.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then in Lancaster, I was like, well, I felt burned out. I just need a break. I'm like, I can live for a while without a job. So I moved on a Friday or Saturday. I believe it was Saturday. That very next Sunday, a day later, a guy approached me and says, hey, do you want a job? Like, this is God. I didn't even know this guy.
Yeah.
But later I found out, and I did work for him for a while, but he was one of my very good friends' dad.
Okay.
But at the time I didn't know. So obviously through my really good friend, he knew about me, but I never knew this guy. He walks up to me. We have like a huge, beautiful live edge coffee table.
Yeah.
That everyone stood at and had their coffee. And he just tapped me on the shoulder. Hey, do you want a job? I don't know who this guy is. I'm like, I'm okay. Because I didn't want a job. I wanted a break, you know? I wanted a break. But then by Thursday, I think it was by Thursday, I was so bored. I just said, hey, dude, can I come in for an interview? And then I had a job, like probably in a week and a half of me living there.
Wow.
Without even trying. But that's just, for me, that's just, God has been faithful.
Provides.
Yeah, faithful everywhere I've gone. And just to kind of recap for the audience is, and for you is, I lived in like obviously Ohio, Baltimore, and Lancaster, and in Pittsburgh right now. I've always moved for the church. In Baltimore, it was for the church, not a job, not for the people. It was for the church. The church for the people. And then Lancaster was for the church. Pittsburgh was the first time I moved for family. Wanted to be with family. Yeah. Because I had a family. Actually, I had a wife. I had a kid. We had a kid. And so that's the first time like I said, we moved for I moved for family. Yeah. And not for church. Every other time was I moved to be a part of a church.
Church, yeah.
Yeah.
And Lancaster is where you met your wife?
Yeah. So anyway, I would get into that a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So in Lancaster, it was in August of 2011 I moved.
Okay.
And then the next summer, I started doing this show. It was my wife's best friend. We're still really good friends with them today. She got married. I'm really, really good friends with her husband.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we were doing this show. I don't know if I should say the name. She was connected with John Christ, the comedian.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
So she was somehow connected with him.
Yeah.
And we were making her idea. She was writing all the script and everything.
Okay.
We would get people from the church to volunteer to be extras and stuff. So we were recording it. I was editing all of it. My wife
Back
and
in the editing.
yeah, what's that? Yeah,
Back in the
video editing and audio. So it was really cool. So we were working really close, and then my wife Chanel came in the picture, and she was one of the main people on camera every week. We would shoot Sunday afternoons. So anyway, I was editing, but we were all working close together, and then finally there was like a spark that happened, and we were making a joke. But where it really took off is I was making honey jokes, like behind the scenes. Oh, we're back on.
Got the power back.
We got the power back. Anyway, so behind the scenes, I would tell her, "Hey, I want to make a video within a video."
Yeah.
And then that's when the sparks, like when the love started happening.
Yeah.
And that's kind of our story there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it was all based around media. I was just realizing that now. It's like how much I've been involved in media.
Yeah. Wow. So you guys met and was she part of the church too?
Yes.
I'm assuming.
The same church, yes.
And so then things just took off from there, huh?
Yeah. So I would say we were engaged for 6 months.
Okay.
And then, no, we were dating 6 months, engaged 6 months. So basically a year later, we were married.
Pretty short.
Yeah.
That's
it was
awesome.
quick.
Yeah.
But it felt like from day one, I had told her, basically, I want to give her whatever time she needs. And somehow we connected really well. Mm-hmm. And she realized that. And it moved really quickly because we had mutual respect and honor for each other.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you guys got married then, and you were plugged in with the church.
Yes.
Started growing together.
Yes.
Meeting other families and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you were still working, where were you working there?
I was working at a company called Sharps Compliance. They're a nationwide company.
Okay.
Have you ever been to a doctor's office with the little red boxes?
Yeah.
I was part of that company.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had multiple jobs there, but my main one, I started out as a driver.
Okay.
And then I moved to dispatch, and then I moved over to customer service because I was going to school for IT.
Okay.
Did you know that?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Did you know that?
Yeah, you went to school for that. Uh-huh.
Yeah. But actually, to back up a little bit, when I was in Baltimore, I went to get my GED, and this is just a memory I had while I was thinking about this whole episode, is I had to pay money to get the GED training. Mm-hmm. So basically that's an equivalent of high school. I don't know if you know that or not.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so what was really cool about it is I never really saw myself as really smart or whatever because of where I came from. And like I told you, self-discovery journey this last week. But I was in the upper portion of the class where they refunded me my money back.
No way.
Every single cent. They just gave it all back.
No way.
Because I think that's the first time I realized that there's more to me. Like there is intelligence because growing up Amish, you just go to work. Yeah. You build stuff. You build houses, you build furniture, and that's what you do your whole life. But I think I realized at that point is there's more there. And then even this last week or two, I realized there's more inside of me that I had not realized. Mm-hmm. And there was a part of me that was subconsciously like seeing myself as second class per se. Mm-hmm. And it's not true. Yeah. It's just my whole journey of self-discovery, this whole journey of realizing who I am. When I say self-discovery, like it's not like voodoo, it's like who I am in God. Yeah. Like who God has created me, just so people know I'm not like, Yeah. But it's all like who God has created me to be and the value that's there.
Mm-hmm. Your identity in Christ is something that is so important, I think, for every man and woman to realize when they first come to know Christ. But especially, I think it's a big thing for men, you know.
It's a journey. I realized it's like, like it's a whole, for at least my experience, it's a journey. Like we constantly have to keep growing, because we all know people who aren't growing,
Yeah.
and it's not very fun to see that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. You have to know your identity in Christ, and you have to know your value of where Christ has placed you. You know, that's awesome. So then you guys moved, you got married, you moved back to Pittsburgh, PA.
that's right.
Where you currently
Right
reside.
here. Yeah.
Back to be a Yinzer.
A
with all of
Yinzer.
us.
You know what? When I first heard that, it annoyed me so much.
Really?
My coworkers would be like, "Are Yins going to this or that?" I'm like, I wanted to slap them, but I'm a Christian. I can't do that.
That's so crazy that you being in Lancaster and in Ohio, you're on both sides of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
You never heard that. That
No,
is literally
never heard of it.
a Western Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh only thing.
And that?
That's
Have
crazy.
you heard of that? And that?
And that, oh yeah.
Oh
and
my
that's-
goodness, that drove me nuts.
Yeah. Eggs and that right up here in Maine.
Yeah.
Have you ever been there, by the way?
Yeah, I have.
Great establishment. Great breakfast.
Free advertisement. Anyway.
Yeah, free plug.
Anyway.
So you moved. But you moved to Pittsburgh because your wife
For family.
is from here.
Yes.
Family. So then you moved here. God's provision, I'm assuming, happened.
Big
But-
time. Oh,
Yeah?
big time. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Tell us.
We couldn't, I can't tell you everything, but we literally couldn't live where we're living without God's provision.
Yeah.
Something that we realized is we were realizing the Bible says certain things, right? Mm-hmm. Like about giving, right? Mm-hmm. And about where you should give. Mm-hmm. We tithe, we give, but we also realized the Bible talks about feeding the hungry. Mm-hmm. We're doing that. There's other things like feeding widows and children, and we found an organization who does that, and we give every single year. And you wouldn't believe there's breakthrough every single year.
Wow.
And people, literally family members, were like, "Oh, you guys have a lot of breakthrough." I'm like, "Yeah, because this is what we're doing."
Yeah.
But I wanted to actually tell you, if you're okay with that, I want to tell you a testimony.
Yeah.
2 years ago, we gave X amount of dollars, right? And then within 2 days, 3 days, we got a freezer paid for within $3 of that amount.
Jeez.
Yeah. And then we were blessed with a half a cow from the butcher. We gave half of it away.
Yeah.
We gave half of it to someone else. So we kept a quarter of the cow. But, and then I went to, this is the coolest thing out of all this. Dentist is not a Christian. I went to my dentist and needed surgery done.
Okay.
Do you know that's a lot of money?
Yeah.
And he basically had to put rebarb in it, kind of like concrete. You had to put rebar to hold it in place.
Yeah.
He had to do all that work. And I was like, I should ask him for a discount because I know the dentist really well. Like, hey, can you help me out here? And I didn't even get a chance. I walk in the door, and you know how they walk in and they say, "All right, Mr. Simon, we're ready for you."
Right.
So he's like, we were walking back to the room, and he's like, "Hey, we're talking about it," and then he's doing the work. He's like, "You know what? So the implant is done in 2 stages. You pay like $700 now, $700 next time."
Okay.
He's like, "You're gonna pay today, but you're not gonna pay next time." All right, that's cool with me.
That's amazing.
So then he was like, as a matter of fact, as he was doing work, he's like, "I'm gonna cancel like all the surgery. You're not gonna pay anything for the surgery." And then there's something else there was something else he did. He's like, "Yeah, you're not gonna pay for that either."
Wow.
I didn't even have to ask.
That's amazing.
But it all came after we gave the first time to that.
Yeah.
There's something to that. Mm-hmm. And we were not doing it to get glory. Like, nobody knew about it except Chanel and I.
Yeah.
No, not even, nobody knew it except the organization and us. Mm-hmm. And then this is happening. So there's something about following biblical principles where there's breakthrough. Mm-hmm. And even in the house we lived, without God's provision, we wouldn't be living there. So even like income. As a matter of fact, like the job I have now, I started out as a driver and I wanted to be in sales.
Yeah.
And then I agreed to go to inside sales to get experience. And now I'm on outside sales, and multiple times there's big customers that came my way.
Yeah.
After us giving.
Wow.
It's weird. It's
God
not weird,
loves
but
a cheerful giver.
I know, and we do it, but we don't tell anyone. Mm-hmm. Sometimes after the fact, when there's a testimony.
Well, yeah, you're sharing a testimony,
Right.
which is powerful, but it's awesome to see God's faithfulness time and time again.
Yes.
As you trust God and you lean on Him for soul provision and blessing. That's awesome. That's amazing. I love that testimony.
Yeah, that's so cool. So I always like sharing it. There's quite a few other ones, but
Yeah.
that kind of caps it off because that all happened within 3 weeks.
Okay.
I think all of that happened within 3 weeks.
Wow.
And that would have been within about 3.5 weeks or 3-ish weeks from us giving.
From giving, like
Yeah.
sowing a seed. Wow.
Sowing a seed.
That's amazing.
Nobody knew except, like I said, us and the organization.
And just how it builds your faith, like the fact that only you and Chanel knew about it.
Yeah.
It just further makes you guys want to stay stronger in your faith, steadfast in your faith, generous, keeping money from being a hold in your life, you know, and taking root and being center, you know, the love of money is the root of all evil. Like that's awesome that you guys have been able to see time and time again when you let go of money and be generous with it. God blesses you.
Yeah, I figured
time and time again.
Yeah, multiple times. I don't know how to say it, but I feel like we got slightly stingy.
Yeah.
And things dry up.
In your marriage at one point,
like,
you mean?
Financially.
Yeah, yeah.
Or even in the marriage too. But I realized when there's something about being, you want to provide as a husband, as a dad, I want to provide for them. So we have to be very responsible. But there's also something I'm realizing about having an open hand. Because God can't always give more.
Yeah.
But he can't change our heart. Like our heart, we have to decide what we're going to do. And if we can't handle the little we have now, how are we ever going to have more?
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
that's awesome.
That's fun.
Yeah. I love hearing testimonies like that. So if you have any other testimonies like that, so right now, so you said how you started in inside sales, now you're in outside sales.
Yes.
God has promoted you through the business or through the organization.
Yes.
And now you are you're staying with that organization, staying with that business, and you're being a good dad and being a good husband.
Yes,
and,
I would say so.
Which is that was like the last part of what I just kind of wanted to ask you. You know, the point of this show is steadfast men unscripted.
Yes.
You know, loyal men, faithful men who are working day in, day out, going to work every day, providing for their families, being faithful with their money and their finances, like you shared, which I love.
Yeah.
And so with all that being said, is there anything? What's like the greatest thing, I guess, that you've learned in your walk with the Lord and in your marriage, and just, you know, like if there's a young Simon that's listening here, or just a younger guy that's thinking about that's just starting out in their early 20s and stuff.
Yeah.
What's something that you can look back and be like, I learned this or I learned that, or...
Yeah, there's. I had some time to think about that. And if I could, I've told Chanel before, like if I could go back, but I can't, right?
Yeah.
I had a rental, right?
In Baltimore.
Yeah, in Baltimore, I had a rental, and I was but money was flowing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I had a job, money was flowing, brother. Yeah. I'm telling you, it was not like big money, but what I did is I squandered it all. Like I just bought clothes all the time.
Yeah.
Like. I told Chanel, I could have stacked up so much money. I could have literally, I could have set our business up, like a rental business before I ever met her. But can't go back, right? I mean, I would have maybe had like 2 properties or something like that, but can't go back, right? I'm glad I learned it then, and versus now with kids.
Yeah.
So if I would say, like, just something that I keep saying is begin with the end in mind. Like, think about if you're 20 years old, like, at least I wasn't thinking about the end, right? Just doing what I want to do. But I had a dream about that one time, and that's where the whole thing comes from. It was the whole premise of the dream was you write down what you want your end to look like, and then you work backwards. And I can tell you how many books I've read since.
Reverse engineer.
What's that? Yeah, reverse engineer. But I've read a lot of different books in the last year. I try to read like quite a few books every year, but surprisingly how many times it mentions that, and I never even heard of it before. Begin with the end in mind. I've never heard of it until my dream. But you know how that is when you have a certain car, all of a sudden they're everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a similar idea. All of a sudden different books talk about it.
Yeah.
I had a dream. It involved the White House, but anyway. But it was really interesting. It was about like I said, it begin with the end in mind. So if I would give somebody advice is look at, let's just say you're not dating anyone, right? What do you want your marriage to look like? This is something that we had to learn along the way is like something would irk us, it would take days to resolve it. Now we've learned, you just say, okay, I'm sorry. Can you forgive me? Like this.
Yeah.
You know what that does? Nothing can take a hold. If it goes a few hours, we can't stand it hardly because we're so used to, like even just earlier today, I did something. Didn't like it.
Yeah.
She kind of snapped, and this happens. It's fine. I do the same thing.
It's called life.
Right. But I go out. But what I'm so impressed with is, and this is what I want to tell people is, think of it in this way. It was 2 minutes later. Chanel gets up, opens the door, says, "Hey, I'm sorry." Just like this. It's gone. Nothing gets a hold of our heart. Nothing can. I don't know how to say it. It's just there's nothing that can take a hold because we have to let it go. And then in terms of like financial, like I see young kids these days like getting loans for cars. I think that's just a waste because if you look at it, all the money that could be going towards investing for the future, giving, like it's a lot of waste of money. And I'm trying to think of anything else. Just be generous in the relationships, ask for forgiveness quickly because that's how things are resolved. That way they don't take a hold. And I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot else than that. I feel like to me, I feel like I'm just a normal guy doing normal work day in and day out. Nobody except my family and friends know. Yeah. And that's fine. Yeah. But it's just like, it's still important. It's important to the people I'm serving in my company, right? It's important to the customers. It's important to my family. Because I have no idea what I'm doing right now, how that will set the girls up for the future. So.
But that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I think you said it right there. How you just said, you're a normal guy. You're working day in and day out. Nobody sees the daily decisions and choices that you're making. But like you brought up your girls right there, they're gonna be able to grow up with a dad that was steadfast, a dad that had character, integrity. You're teaching them the Dutch language. Yes. But they're gonna grow up to know, to have a good family. They're going to grow up having a loving mother and a loving dad. Yes. And they're going to grow up to learn hard work. They're going to learn everything, that you've learned. And that's the whole purpose of this show. Yeah. Well, it's one of the main purposes of this show because I want to highlight guys like that in life, Yeah. The guy that's staying loyal, and doing the right thing. That's a man of integrity, man of character. And in my opinion, guys like you and guys like that I want to interview on this show, they provide an incredible amount of value to our society. Yes. But it's not highlighted. Exactly. And so that's why I want to find these guys. I want to find guys like you, and I want to highlight it. And then I want to show and encourage other younger men, you can live like this. You can follow after the Lord. You can live a life of integrity. Exactly. And then you can reap God's blessing from it and have peace and be successful. So. Exactly. I love it, man. I love it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming on the show. Any last words of the notes that we didn't get to? No, I don't think so. No. Well, I do want to tell it. Can I tell this story? Yeah, Can I tell the lumber story? Yeah. I wanted to tell this because I think it kind of highlights what my life was like in one story. So I remember, I don't know, like I was probably 13 or 14. Okay. I told my dad, I want to build a 3-sided shed for the horses out there. So basically it would have been, I believe 12 by 24 by 12. Okay. So 3-sided. Okay. And then it would have been about 8 feet tall. Okay. So the horses can go in like there. A stall? Yeah, something like that, but he would be out in the pasture. Yeah. So I asked my dad, can I build this shed? He's like, yeah. Basically, in Dutch version with me, yeah, knock yourself up. Go ahead and build it. So I go ahead and I was going to use pallets for the walls. Okay. And then so I take our buggy and I go to the town to go get lumber. And I was like I said, 13 or 14. I went all by myself. I'm like, I got the money. I'm going to go buy this stuff. I guess I used my dad's checkbook. I don't know what I did, but I don't even know how I had the money or how I did it. But basically, I bought all these 4x4s, OSB, everything I needed.
but it was way too heavy for the buggy. So I jam everything in there, and I take off. I don't think I would have made it home. I think the wheels would have broken. But anyway, so I pull out, and I'm taking a left in the town, and it's a little bit uphill. So the horse is pulling, and it's too heavy. It's too heavy. So the horse jerks, and all the lumber flies out.
No way. Oh, my gosh. All over the road.
Yeah, all over the road.
Jeez. Man, oh, man.
But thankfully, there was a guy with a pickup truck right behind me.
Yeah.
I have no idea who this guy was.
Uh-huh.
But it could have also been weird. He could have kidnapped me. But he was like, hey. So I pulled the horse off to the side and tied him off at the fence there.
Okay.
And he loads all the wood on his truck, and I drive home with him. I tell him where to go.
No way.
Yeah. But I'm like,
out.
Nowadays, I would never let that happen to any of my kids. But that's what you did in the Amish town.
Jeez.
Like, stuff like that happened. It's funny now.
Yeah.
But all the lumber flew out onto the road. I'm like, this could have been bad. But the buggy could have broken down. It was way too heavy. But he helped me. Anyway, that was I thought it was such a fun story.
That's crazy.
Just like, this guy was like, hey, I'll help you. And then we went to Royal King after. He said, hey, as long as I can go to Royal King after we drop your lumber
Great
off.
store. One of my favorites.
What's that?
One of my favorite stores.
Really? Why?
I just love the country.
Okay.
Anyway. It's a country store.
It's a country store, yeah. So anyway, he goes and wants to look for something at Royal King, and then he takes me back to my horse and buggy, and I go home.
Wow.
But it's just like stuff like that happen.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I was just thinking about that, and I find it funny.
Huh.
But it's just like, this is what, as a kid, I was ambitious, wanted to make it happen.
Yeah. Did you ever build the thing?
Never built it.
You never built it? So you took all the lumber back home and never
No, I
built
bought all the lumber, but I never bought it. I never built it.
So you just kind of took it home, dropped it off, learned the lesson.
Pretty much.
And then moved on. Do you, have you ever, like, messed with horses since? Leaving the Amish, like, no desire?
Not really. I do want to have goats and chickens, though.
Yeah.
Because they're easy to, how's that? They're basically self-sustaining.
Yeah.
Like goats, you can just put them in the pasture and let them do their thing. And then the chickens, you can put a feeder out and let them feed for days. Obviously, you have to change your water, but they're easy to take care of.
Yeah. Interesting.
I do miss that Amish cooking now, guys. Just put a plug in for the Amish cooking.
David brought me, what do you call it? I think it was like maple syrup pie or something like that. Ooh. That was amazing. Amish pie, Amish donuts. They make good food. Nice. You missed a little bit of that?
I do miss that. I'd miss that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Because it's not like we eat fine. Chanel cooks fine.
Yeah.
It's just there's something about the way the Amish do it. It's just that tradition. When we were going back to that funeral, like Chanel got to actually have authentic Amish food.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Huh.
The best peanut butter you can find in the world.
I bet.
So anyway, there's other stuff too, but that was kind of the highlight of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah.
Well, I think that concludes another episode. Huh?
That ties it up?
That ties it up.
Anyway, go ahead.
Another episode of Steadfast Men Unscripted. Okay. Thank you for being on the show, Simon.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me share my story, and then
absolutely,
let's have fun.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.